Good morning, Carlos, and good morning, listeners. It's the Humble Grape podcast where we talk about interesting wines, interesting winemakers, funny things that happen in the wine trade. And today we're going to be talking about the Loire Valley in France. So it's a very interesting region. Carlos, the wine buyer at Humble Grape, is he's an expert on all things wine. And I'm going to test to see that he knows more than me about the Loire Valley because it's one of my favorite regions. Good morning, Carlos. How are you doing?
Morning, James. Good morning to our listeners. I'm very well, thank you. Very excited to be talking about the Loire Valley, uh, fantastic wine region. And yeah, let's see if I can answer all your questions.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so Loire Valley is a beautiful wine region. It's been they've been making wine for centuries. One of the interesting things about the Loire is that it has the sandstone and there's a lot of these beautiful sandstone castles all over the Loire Valley, and the sandstone traditionally comes from digging out cellars for a lot of the vineyards, and then they had the stone accessible to build these big kind of chateau all over the Loire Valley. There's literally tons of them. It's easy to get to from London. It's just a few hours drive. It's not as far down south as Bordeaux and all those places. And because it's kind of reasonably north, it's a coolish climate wine region. So the wines aren't big and opulent like you can get down in the Languedoc and in those parts of France. They're not big and opulent. They're not they're more kind of leaner, minerally, cool climate, but really distinctive and super interesting. And I think Carlos, what is difficult for a lot of people who are getting to grips with wine is that in the new world, like South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the US, wine bottles are usually labeled with the name of the vineyard, the name of the country, and then the name of the grape. And if a reasonably new, person to wine discovers that they love Merlot or Cabernet Sauvignon or Chardonnay, they can easily pick those wines up in shops, supermarkets, wine shops and stuff. Whereas if you're buying wine from a French property, they'll usually just have the name of the property and then the name of the region, and then we have to know which grapes are involved, which is quite tricky. So what do you think about that one, Carlos?
Yeah, I agree with you. In the new world, things are much, much simpler for the consumer, for the customer. Normally, you look at a wine label from the new world, and it has the name of the guy, the grape variety, and the vintage. So it's super easy. In
Yeah,
the old world, it's different. Labeling is more traditional, as you said, and the name of the region comes in there. And if you don't really know, there are white wine from Sancerre, for instance, is made from Sauvignon Blanc. It can be a bit confusing for the
yeah,
consumer. Um, for those who are listening, the best way here is to talk to us.
yes,
I know that it can be daunting, and when you're looking at a wine list or you're looking at the shop, sometimes people feel very conscious to not to show how little they know or how much they know. But little they know that we like talking about wines, and we'll talk about wines until the cows come home.
yeah.
Who There's nobody on earth that likes talking more about wine than a sommelier. So
And it is, it's part of our DNA at Humble Grape that it's for people who come and visit us. It's our job to give someone who visits Humble Grape their best wine experience. Find a wine they love. That's what we train everyone to do. That's our purpose. It's not our purpose to spout about some wine we love and want something we're amazing and that we find niche and interesting. It's our purpose to find a wine that the customers of Humble Grape love. So whether that's a quick conversation around grapes or style or something you've had before that you like or something you don't like, we'll go out of our way to find something just for you.
absolutely. Why not on your terms? We fully understand that everyone is at a different stage of the wine journey, and we respect that. And our job here is to help them with the wine journey. It doesn't matter where they are. If they started drinking wine yesterday, or if they are a winemaker, that's what we focus on taking them and helping them through the wine journey.
Yeah, fantastic. So, my wine journey kind of started in the Loire Valley. It was one of the first places I started importing wine from.
What a way to start, eh?
And I love it for a bunch of reasons. But once I looked at the map, when I got to the Loire Valley and I started meeting with winemakers, a lot of them would pull out this map, the one we're looking at now on the screen. And for those of you not looking at the screen, the Loire Valley runs all the way from the west coast of France, almost like right across France. You've got Muscadet and Nantes, the town of Nantes on the west. And then it goes all the way to Sancerre and Puy-Fumé on the right, which is just north of where Burgundy starts.
Yes.
And if you think about grapes, uh, you've got Sauvignon Blanc for white. We've got Chenin Blanc for white, and then we've also got Melon de Bourgogne. We've got a few other grape varieties, but traditionally, if you think about the Loire Valley, the easiest way to understand it is in the middle of the Loire Valley, Saumur, Champigny, Bourgogne, Saint-Nicolas de Bourgogne. The reds are usually Cabernet Franc. That's going to be in
Hmm.
there. And then the whites will all be Chenin Blanc in the middle of the Loire Valley. As you
Yeah.
move over further towards the east, where you get Sancerre and Puy-Fumé, the whites are mostly going to be Sauvignon Blanc, and the reds are mostly going to be Pinot Noir. So that's
Yeah.
very simple. Middle, Cabernet Franc, Chenin Blanc, all the way over to the right, Sancerre Puy-Fumé is going to be your Sauvignon Blanc and your Pinot Noir. And then on the west coast of the Loire, where you get Muscadet, very seafood-friendly wines. Tell us a bit about Muscadet, Carlos, and because I think a lot of people don't know about that, and it's a very well-priced wine because it's not super popular and not super well known, but I find it's delicious with seafood, very fresh, very interesting. What can we tell the listeners about Muscadet?
Yeah. So interesting what you're saying. The Loire Valley, it is the longest river in France. And talking about Muscadet specifically, um, did you know that spring arrives in Muscadet about 2 or 3 weeks before it arrives in Sancerre on the other side of the Loire Valley?
Oh, that's
So
fantastic. No, I didn't know that.
the range of climates and throughout the river change quite a lot. Um, you mentioned that Muscadet isn't a very well known region, and it's true, and it's a bit sad because back in the 90s, the UK was the major market for Muscadet.
All right.
And then because it's proximity to the Atlantic Ocean, for those who can't see the map, Muscadet literally faces, the pennant faces the Atlantic Ocean. There's quite a bit of risk of frost here. And in the early 90s, there was terrible frost. I think it was 1991 that decimated the vineyards. And they ended up losing the UK market, and the wines became not very well known. Um,
Okay, interesting. So
yes.
because of that frost, they couldn't produce any wine, and then the UK market kind of lost focus on that wine and never went back again.
They never went back.
Yeah,
Slowly, the wines are coming back um, because, one, they are delicious. They're made from a grape variety called Melon de Bourgogne, which actually is from Burgundy, but
yeah.
it does really well in the soils of Muscadet. The soils are very well drained soils, and it produces wines that are fresh, focused, often very mineral,
Mm,
very seafood friendly, as you said. If you
yeah,
don't want to drink sparkling wine with oysters, for instance, a glass of Muscadet will do the job perfectly.
yeah, fantastic.
And there is a lot of producers making organic wines here. The producer that we import our wines from is organic.
Yeah.
Uh, the wines are very accessible and absolutely fantastic. They normally have notes of green apples and green pears, that smell of wet stones and wet pebbles. They are
Hmm.
absolutely delicious.
Fantastic. Yeah, it makes me want to have some oysters right now. Okay, so we've got Muscadet over on the west coast, and then we moving over from Muscadet. The big town around the Muscadet region is Nantes, obviously. And then
Mhm.
we're moving along the river, into Anjou and the Coteau de Lion. Now the Coteau de Lion is kind of interesting because my understanding is they do a lot of kind of sweet wines there, but it's kind of an interesting way they do that with those tiny little rivers that are kind of running into the Loire Valley, and there's a lot of mist that kind of comes up on the river banks, and that causes some of the grapes to shrink and rot, and then
Mhm.
they make sweet wine from that. Can you tell us a bit about how that works, Carlos?
Absolutely. Yeah, so I love the style of the wines from Coteau de Leon. As you mentioned, you've got the Leon River that goes into the Loire River with small rivers that feed into it. And something very interesting happens here during the summer. In the morning, because of all those little rivers crisscrossing the region is covered by fog.
Okay,
Fog is humid, and with the fog, there's a very special type of fungus that starts growing on the skins of the grapes. In
okay,
the afternoon, when the sun comes out, it burns through the fogs and it starts to dry the fungus. And the fungus, it pierces the skins of the grapes. So with the
okay.
heat of the afternoon, the afternoon sun, water starts evaporating out of the grapes and the grapes start shrinking.
Oh,
Next
fantastic.
morning, the process starts all over again. You get mist, you get the fungus. In the afternoon, you get sun. The fungus start to dry. The grapes start to have water evaporated out of them. And
Okay.
what it does is it concentrates flavor in the grapes
Yes.
because there's less water, concentrates acidity. So the wines from here taste like nectar
Okay.
pods. They are sweet, they are luscious, they are rich, but they have that backbone of acidity that doesn't make them feel cloying. They feel quite light and supple.
Yeah. And my understanding is that they're also, much more accessible in terms of price than the sweet wines from Bordeaux and those kinds that kind of stuff.
Absolutely, they will cost a lot less than the traditional style of sweet wines, such as the one produced in southern Bordeaux or
Hmm.
Tokay. Those wines tend to be quite premium price, but the wines from Coteau de Leon don't. They are much more accessible, and
Fantastic.
they don't just pair with desserts.
Okay.
You can pair them with savory food.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that. What kind of savory food would you pair a Côte de Lion with?
A delicious pate,
Okay, nice.
a chicken liver pate. It's very savory and earthy. Will pair really well with those tropical fruit notes from Coteau de Leon. And
Interesting.
charcuterie.
Nice.
It's a
Interesting. So
beautiful
so
pairing.
for the listeners, Coteau is spelled Coteaux. It just means on the side of the slope, and du Layon, and Layon is Layon. So if you're looking for those wines, they're very well priced, nice and interesting. Thank you, Carlos, for describing that.
You're
So
welcome.
another interesting region, slightly north of Côte de Lion, is Savennières, where my understanding is they make Chenin Blanc wines, but not a traditional dry Chenin Blanc style. They use a process of oxidization or maybe some skin contact because the wines are very distinctive. Sauvignon, can you tell us a bit about those ones, Carlos?
Absolutely. So Savinier is on the north bank of the Loire Valley. And the best vineyards, they face south so they can get the morning sun
Hmm.
because here it's still quite cold. And
Okay.
if for those who can't see the map, Savigny is still quite close to the Atlantic. So you get that maritime influence, the cold front that comes from the Atlantic. The wines here are made from Chenin Blanc, and they tend to have the backbone of acidity, a very high level of acidity. So in order to balance out the acidity in the wine, winemakers will use certain techniques, such as aging the wine in barrel,
Hmm.
which will expose the wine to oxygen, um, oxida an oxidative style, which makes the wine smell a little bit like toasted hazelnuts. That adds complexity to balance out the high acidity that Chenin Blanc can achieve here. The Sauvignon wines are very fruit friendly
Yeah.
because of the complexity and then the acidity they carry with them. They're absolutely delicious.
Yeah.
We've
But it's
tried on
kind
the corner.
It's quite a distinctive kind of wine style, that some
Mhm.
people might think is a bit Marmite, but I find it fascinating.
Yes, they are. It's besides being food friendly, that's the perfect glass of wine to start the evening. You know, if you're looking for an aperitif, you don't
Mm,
really want to drink bubbles or sparkling wine. A little glass of Sauvignon will get your mouth salivating because your acidity and get you ready to start your meal.
nice, nice. Thank you, Carlos. So we keep moving now. Imagine we're in a little boat. We've started out in Muscadet and we've been in our boat, going down the Loire Valley. Sorry, down the Loire River, and we've passed Savennières. We've spoken about. We've passed Coteau de Lion, and now we're going past some big old chateau. And there's a beautiful village called Saumur, 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 and the wines from Saumur are predominantly red, and the
Mm.
red Cabernet Franc, and there are some Chenin Blanc wines, but you've got these villages around there, like Chinon, Chinon, where I believe King George III used to live many years ago.
Mhm.
We've got Saumur Champigny, and we've got some Nicolas de Bourgogne, and we've got Bourgogne as well. So
I,
the Cabernet Franc reds from these regions are truly amazing. They're not like the Cabernet Franc wines that you get from Bordeaux, which is further south, which could be, imagine you're on the right bank of Bordeaux. The Cabernet Francs there are a bit more opulent, a bit more fruit forward. These are more green, like, kind of bell pepper flavors and pretty interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about some of these regions, Carlos?
Absolutely. It's interesting. As you move from the Atlantic Ocean from Nantes, the weather starts to change a little. In Nantes, it's a maritime climate, so heavily influenced by the Atlantic. But as you move away from it, the cold influence from the Atlantic starts to become more moderate. That's why you can grow black grape varieties here.
Okay.
To ripen Cabernet Sauvignon, you need a bit more Cabernet Franc. You need more warmth, which you can't really get in Penante. There's another thing that's interesting here. Those who are seeing the map won't be able to see it, but on the southern part, on the southern bank of the Loire River, as you move away from the Atlantic Ocean, there's a set of hills there that go from north to south, and
Mm-hmm.
hills stop the cold influence from the Atlantic. It created
Oh,
a
okay.
microclimate of warmth in there. That's why Saumur produces a lot of Cabernet Franc. Um,
Interesting.
if you see a Saumur Champigny on the bottle, it will be 100% Cabernet Franc.
Yeah.
This wine is a joy to drink.
Yes.
Lots of red fruit, cherries, blackberries as well, a little bit of black fruit. They tend to spend a short time in oak. So you get a layer of vanilla, toast, smoke. And as you said, they have a lovely green smell to them, like bell pepper or leaves or quite hedgy. Absolutely delicious wines.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting that this little microclimate created a warmer area for the red to ripen nicely. And w when I was in the Loire Valley, the winemakers were telling me that you get different kinds of soil. You get this calcareous kind of sandstone, which is it's like sandy, and the reds that are on this kind of soil tend to be softer. And
Mhm.
then you get more gravelly kind of like soils where the reds tend to be a bit bigger, and that's kind of how you get lighter Chinon, like Chinon, for example, the Cabernet Francs can be lighter in some parts with vineyards that have sandy soil, and vineyards with gravelly soil they can be kind of much more big and structured. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. The thing with soils is soils control, of course, how much nutrients are available to the vine, but
Mm-hmm.
also they interact with the atmosphere, with the climate.
Okay.
So gravelly soils, they tend to act like heaters. They will absorb
Mm-hmm.
heat during the day and then release heat back into the vineyard overnight. And that makes the Cabernet Franc, the ripening season of Cabernet Franc prolong. So that's
Mm-hmm.
why the wines become bigger.
I
because
see.
the vines will accumulate more sugar in the grapes, and the wines will be bigger in alcohol, and you will also be riper. They will taste riper. They will have more tannins. Whereas in sandy soils, they cool down very quickly once the sun
Okay.
goes down, and then the ripening process slows down during the night, so the wines become lighter, fresher, and a little bit more perfumed than the wines on gravel soils.
Oh, that's interesting. I never knew that. I knew that lighter wines were from the sandy ones and that the bigger wines were from gravel, but I didn't know why. So that's pretty interesting. Okay, so we've been in the center of the Loire Valley where we're talking predominantly about the reds. We've been to Saumur, Saumur-Champigny, Saint-Nicolas-de-Bourgogne, Bourgogne, and you know th those red Cabernet Franc wines there are just absolutely stunning. I fell in love with them, you know, after spending a couple of weeks in the Loire Valley. But you know,
Mhm.
there's still a lot of delights as we get back in our boat and we keep sailing, you know, east on our in the direction of Puy-Fumé and Sancerre. And now we're hitting places like Vouvray, Montlouis-sur-Loire, that kind of that kind of place. Now, Vouvray and Montlouis-sur-Loire are making distinctive whites and lots of interesting stuff there as well, and also some sparkling wine. I know they make sparkling wine from Chenin in lots of regions of the Loire, but the ones from these regions are particularly interesting. Can you tell us a bit about that, Carlos?
Yeah, we talked about the white wines from the Penante and the reds from the Saumur Champigny, but we didn't really talk about sparkling. The Loire Valley produces a lot of sparkling wine. Sparkling wine from the Loire will be called Cremant.
Yeah,
It's made in the same style with the same techniques as champagne, with a second fermentation in the bottle. And one thing that we've noticed here in the UK, James, is that sales of Cremant are growing each
right.
year because it offers a high quality wine from independent producers such as the ones we work with
Hmm.
at a price that's more accessible than a bottle of champagne.
Right. And it's
So
made exactly like champagne, but the difference here is it's from the Loire Valley and it's made from Chenin Blanc, whereas champagne is usually Chardonnay or Pinot Noir or Pinot Meunier.
exactly, the Loire Valley will use Chenin Blanc. Some producers also use Cabernet Franc
Okay.
in the blend. So for those listeners who sometimes, sometimes you are in a restaurant, you open the wine list, you feel like drinking sparkling wine, but you don't feel like paying for a bottle of champagne. Go for a Cremant.
Okay.
It will
Cremant,
be more
Cremant de
accessible.
Loire.
Cremant de
Excellent.
Loire will be more accessible, but it will deliver similar style to champagne.
Yeah. And no, we were in the Côte de Léon earlier, where the sweet wines are pretty accessible, but the sweet wines of Vouvray are famous and I think a little bit pricier, right? Is there a reason for that?
Yes, they are. The wines from Vouvray are a little bit pricey, a little bit more expensive, because they are more recognizable than the wines from the Coteau de Leon.
Hmm.
There is more demand for these wines than the Coteau de Leon, and we
Hmm.
know that demand pushes price, right?
Okay.
Price up.
Okay.
So that's the reason some of these wines will be a little bit more expensive, and some of the Vouvray wines even tend to have a little bit of petillance, a little bit of
Ah,
bubbles to liven them up. Some producers bottle the wine like that. So they are absolutely delicious.
okay. So if you have a Vouvray and it has a few bubbles, that's not necessarily a wine fault. That's just the style.
That's just the style, exactly.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. So we hop back in our boat. Now there's a lot of, you know, big wine regions in the Loire, like Touraine, Anjou. We're not going to go into too much detail about that, but now we're going to move across to some very famous parts of the Loire Valley. If you imagine your boat goes through Orléans and it's going all the way across to what are probably two of the most famous villages there,
Mhm.
Sancerre and Puy-Fumé. Puy-Fumé, if you're not looking at the map, is on the north bank of the river and
Mhm.
Sancerre is on the south, and they make very famous white wines from Sauvignon Blanc. But Puy-Fumé and Sancerre, even though they are pretty close to each other, the styles are quite distinctive. and they can also change depending on whether they're on silex, which is a kind of a slate, or different kinds of soils. So, yeah, can you try and help us understand the differences between Sancerre and Pouilly-Fumé and what we can expect? If we're talking about the white wines now, we'll go on to the Pinot Noirs later. So, white wines made from Sauvignon Blanc.
Yes. So here we are in Sauvignon Blanc country. Sauvignon Blanc country starts on the Touraine region and then extends over to Sancerre.
Okay.
Sancerre and Pouilly-Fumé are normally known as central vineyards because they are bang in the middle in central France.
Yeah.
Climate here is continental climate.
Mm-hmm.
So listeners who don't quite understand what a continental climate is, it is much drier than in the west side of the Loire River,
Mm-hmm.
with cold winters and short and dry summers.
Okay.
Has a heavy influence on the style of wine. Um, Comparing Sancerre and Pouilly-Fumé, there will be differences between producers. So we are going to start with wines that have not been oaked. Um,
Okay.
Sancerre wines tend to be the ones that are unoaked. They tend to be light, supple, with a more pronounced grassy, freshly mown grass note than the wines from Pouilly-Fumé. The wines
Mm-hmm.
from Pouilly-Fumé tend to ripen a little bit further. And when Sauvignon Blanc ripens further, it starts to develop a lovely note of passion fruit. In
Okay. Interesting.
so that is the note that will differentiate both of them. They both have a line of minerality in them. They smell of wet pebbles and wet stones. But the wines from Pouilly-Fumé is slightly riper. Now,
Okay.
there are some producers in the area here that they will take the wines up one level, such
Mm-hmm.
as Michel Vatin, that we
Yep.
got from Sancerre.
Mm-hmm.
Michel ferments his wine in old barrels and age them in old barrels.
Mm.
That adds a lovely texture to the wine. The wine becomes more texturized, richer, and rounder. Uh,
Okay.
Absolutely fantastic. But it's still with that, we are in Sancerre here, so it's still with that note of freshly mown grass and minerality. Whereas the ones on Pouilly-Fumé side will be slightly riper with a note of passion fruit on them.
Yeah. I mean, I've always found that Sancerre has more, in general, more acidity than Pouilly-Fumé from the wines that I've been drinking. Um, and the interesting thing about that region is obviously very famous for Sancerre and Pouilly-Fumé wines, but they
Mhm.
also make beautiful, really, really stunning Pinot Noirs. Yeah,
Yes, they
tell us a bit about those.
yes they do. And the interesting thing here is one in every 10 bottles of wine produced in Sancerre are made from Pinot Noir.
Okay, only 1 in 10. That's a small,
One
small
in
chunk.
10.
Yeah,
So it is quite rare to find Sancerre Rouge. We have a Pinot Noir from Michel Vatin
yeah.
uh, in the collection, and the best way to describe this wine is when we talk about French Pinot Noir, normally Burgundy comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
We know the Burgundian wines tend to be generally much more premium in price. So
Mm-hmm.
for those who like the style, let's say, of a Chambon Musigny, which
Yeah.
is elegant and perfumed, um, a Sancerre Rouge is an alternative that will cost you sometimes 50 to 60% less than what
Yes.
would pay for a bottle of Chambon Musigny.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of Sancerre Rouge. I've never had a Puy Fumé Rouge though. I'm sure they make them there, but I've never had one.
Yeah, it's even rarer than Sancerre Rouge to find.
Yeah.
Um, and these pinots also tend to be aged in barrels. So they will come with a lovely note of toast, vanilla, a hint of smoke, adding complexity. So they tend to be complex Pinot Noirs.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Carlos. That when we started the conversation about muscadet, you mentioned oysters.
Mhm.
Oysters with muscadet. Now we're in the Loire Valley. Like the whole Sancerre and goat's cheese thing, right? Is that true? Is that the perfect pairing?
When we're talking to customers or even training our the newer members of our team on food and wine pairing, one of the things that we tell them is that what grows together goes together.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Wines are no, that they have an element of culture around them. They are developed um, to pair with the dishes of the area. And
Mm,
that's why there's a lot of goat's cheese being produced here. So Sancerre and goat's cheese is a natural pairing. It works because Sancerre wines are very high in acidity, and all that lovely acidity cuts through the fat and the creaminess of goat's cheese. And
interesting.
if you want to enhance it and make it even more special, a little drop of orange blossom honey on top of the goat's cheese with a lovely glass of Sancerre will change your life.
Okay, excellent. I'm looking forward to my life being changed soon. Okay, cool. So that was a very quick kind of tour down the river of the Loire Valley. Is there anything in parting that you'd like to share with the listeners about the Loire Valley or for today, Carlos?
Um, Only one thing. For those listeners who are interested in drinking organic wines or are more concerned about what they put in their bodies. So looking for wines that are low intervention, low in sulfites, sometimes natural wines. The Loire Valley is a hotbed for these wines. A
Right.
lot of producers here are organic or biodynamic or low intervention, aka using very, very little sulfite, which is the case
Mm,
of Chelvatan that we import, or the producer that we import from Muscadet, Mendade Gabourey. All of those wines are low in intervention. So for those who are interested, that are looking for low intervention or natural wines, the Loire Valley is a hotbed for them.
it is. And the Loire Valley is like it's as I said in the beginning, it's very close to the UK. You can drive, from Calais down there in a few hours and spend a week there, and you'll never be able to taste even like a hundredth of all the different wine styles they've got. It's a fantastic, fantastic place to visit. Beautiful chateau. The town of Chinon is absolutely stunning. Saumur-Champigny, they're just beautiful, beautiful places to visit with lots of history, steeped in history. So I do suggest if you do have some time in the next few years, make your way down there. And a nice time I found to visit is kind of either June or September.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those customers who like to get a bottle of wine, light in the cellar, and then go back and visit a couple of years later.
Hmm.
The red wines from Chinon, Cabernet Franc, they age beautifully. The other day
Yeah,
we opened a 2014 Chinon, and it's
nice.
absolutely amazingly. So for those who want to invest and put a wine away and then go back, age wine, the Cabernet Francs from Chinon will age very, very well.
Fantastic, Carlos. It's been so much fun chatting to you today. And yeah, so if listeners want to get hold of any of these wines, they can find some of them on the Humble Grape website. Are we offering anything for people?
Absolutely. So if you go on our website to order wine, when you go to checkout, use the code HG podcast 10. We'll put
Hmm.
down the notes of the show to get 10% off your order with us.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Carlos. Happy Friday and have a good weekend.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, listeners. Have a lovely weekend. Try some wines from the Loire Valley over the weekend, and we'll see you again in the next episode of our podcast.